Hey there, this is Elizabeth from Gabriel Family Adventures, and today I'm going to share a review for you all of our bike tour in Copenhagen, Denmark. So we did this summer. My husband and I, we were on a cruise, a Baltic Sea cruise, and we stopped for a day in Copenhagen. And so we let the kiddos stay at the kids club, and we decided to tour around the city because bike touring is our favorite way to see any destination. So here we go. All right, so the bike tour itself, we booked it through the cruise ship, and the port that your cruise ship stops at in Copenhagen is a little ways away from the kind of downtown area. It's definitely walkable. You don't have to take a taxi or anything like that to get to the main canals. But with the bike tour, they meet you right out front. You get your super stylish yellow vest and helmet, and they usually, they'll have your tour guide there, and they're typically multilingual tour guides, so that way they can communicate with pretty much anybody. Our particular tour guide was a student in Copenhagen. He was actually from South America. So it was really neat learning about the history of the area, but also hearing his perspective as someone who had only lived in the country for about 2 years. So we got with our tour group. It was a pretty small group, which is kind of fun. A fun way to see this, any kind of city, is with a small tour group instead of one of those huge buses with 50 to 100 people on them.
In Denmark, bike tour. So excited. It's beautiful out. There's a marathon today, so we're gonna see some runners. Maybe I'll have to come back and run a marathon here.
And we hit pretty much all of the important historic landmarks that you can find around the city center of Copenhagen. And we stopped at the Little Mermaid, which apparently is in the top 5 of most disappointing historic landmarks. It was cute. Our tour guide said it gets vandalized a lot, which bums me out, and that it was decapitated last year, and so they had to add a head back on. So that's a bit of a bummer. And what we ended up doing is, as we were sort of biking around and stopping at various, gorgeous landmarks and buildings, we often were sort of running parallel with the tour buses. So sometimes you would have to pedal around massive groups of other tourists, and some of these were brick and sort of cobblestone streets, so it got a little bumpy and a little hairy at times because you'd have to sort of weave in and out of other tour groups. But it's because everyone's trying to hit all of the major attractions, and I'd much rather do that on bike than be with such a massive group. What was interesting is the day we were there was also the day of what was called the Royal Race, which is something that the royal family puts on every year. There's a 1 mile, maybe 1 kilometer distance. 1 kilometer seems pretty short. And then there is a full marathon distance. And so that was a big event, and there was, all kinds of fun booths and, people wearing their race shirts all over the place. So that was really exciting. And the weather was really beautiful, a little overcast, not too hot, kind of perfect if you were trying to run a marathon. So we got to see a lot of that. And then of course we went to, the major canals in Copenhagen, and we got to walk around and hear about, the various famous people throughout history. And as we toured, the royal palace, we got to see where the royal family lives and some really cool facts about them, and how countries operate that have a royal family as well as a democracy, which is really interesting. Then we went around Tivoli Gardens, and there was enough time in the day that if you had wanted to spend a few hours in Tivoli Gardens before the ship left, you could definitely do that. And if we ever come back to Denmark, which I really hope we do because it's an incredible place, so beautiful, we'll bring our kids to Tivoli Gardens so they can go on the rides and all that kind of stuff. And then we stopped for lunch right around there and sort of hung out, got some good coffee, and then we did a little more touristing. We went to the Rosenborg kind of park museum area, and because it was such a nice day out, we saw a lot of the locals sort of lounging and having their lunch outside in the grass, which was really nice. And the tour itself, I will say this about a bike tour, it was unlike some of the other cities that we've toured. We didn't cover that much ground because the city is pretty dense and a lot of the major historic sites are really close to one another. So we didn't exactly bike a lot of miles and break a sweat, and we still had time in our day before our ship left. And so what we decided to do is actually head back to the canal area and get some lunch, and we wanted to try some of the local seafood because that's such a staple of a lot of the Baltic countries, their diets. So we had a variety of different seafood options before we went back and did, you know, a little touristy shopping and then got back on the ship. So overall, would I recommend the bike tour? It was a nice way to see the area, and it's always nice to have a tour guide who knows the history of the area because they can teach you a lot. But if you're an avid walker, if you're someone who really likes to be active, I would recommend doing it on your own, and you don't need to hire a tour company, especially if you get a guidebook or something like that. And because everything is so close together, you can cover a lot of it without needing to pay for a bike tour. But it was fun, we really enjoyed it, and Copenhagen is a place that I would really like to go back to in the future and spend more time there because it was really incredible. So if you have any questions or comments, please put those below and subscribe to this channel for more travel adventures in the future. Thank you.
Junie just ran a red light. Broke the law in a foreign country.